finished Genesis a few days ago. It was really cool. And reading it as an adult, cover to cover, from chapter 1 to, I believe, 50. It was very different. Um, let us make human beings in our image. I think that there's a lot of play with words there. I don't think, opinion wise, that it's our image of the human being, because I think that's not who we are. This is our vehicle, but I think it's the image of the spirit, and image maybe, if this is the word of God, um, image may be translated different. Maybe our essence. There's a few places that says us, let us make human beings. Well, who was with God up there? Making seed bearing plants and fruit trees for your food. Makes me feel that we were meant to be vegetarians, or that at the very least, the first few humans were vegetarians. God formed a man from the dust on the ground. That's really cool because, now, 3,000 plus years or whatever after this was written, now we could take a handful of dust from the ground and see that every element and mineral and metal and all that stuff is in us also. Adam and Eve, a lot of the issues, the blame game, the arguing, it all started way, way back then. The bit of, God in the Old Testament was a ruthless God. He was just a ruthless God. And he intentionally confused people. Like it was, he condemns women. I will sharpen the pain of your pregnancy, and in pain you will give birth, and you will desire to control your husband, but he will rule over you. Like, it's pretty intense, like condemnation, even though woman is just amazing. Acknowledging that people lived a long time, and many of the studies now, looking back, it makes sense. The curve went really, really down. But I mean, Adam lived 930 years, and Seth 105 when he became a father. Seth lived to 807. No, another 807. So he lived 912 years. Enosh lived 905. Kenan 840. No, Kenan 910. Mahalel 895. Jared 962. Long, long, long time. 777. Lamech. Nephilites. In those days, and for some time after, giant Nephilites lived on the earth. For whenever the sons of God had intercourse with women, they gave birth to children who became the heroes and famous warriors of ancient times. Nephilites, giants in those times. Are they like demigods? Like, I did a little research. Some say that they were fallen angels. But I mean, if a woman has sex with these gods, the children became heroes and famous warriors. They're DNA must have been of alien kind, some sort. That was really, really cool, really spooky. I've been Christian all my life. Don't ever remember anything about that. One little spot. And maybe as I continue to read right now, I'm in Exodus 18 or something like that. And I plan to read the whole thing. So maybe I'll learn more of it. A lot on the flood. That's in one place it says bring a pair of every kind of animal. Another one is take 7 pairs. And here's where I see meat being approved, because he says, take 7 pairs of animals that are approved to eat. 10.5 months after the flood, then started getting some dry weather. You must never eat meat that still has the lifeblood in it. And I reckon that's why Jewish people eat kosher. So that was the first time I seen that rule. It's a lot about Noah's sons. Noah lived 950 years. I mean, of course, they could build pyramids and all this and all that with that kind of knowledge that you would get. First of all, you got the purest of the purest blood from the beginning of time, and you got Nephilites, whatever, giants, demigods roaming around. You live 900 years. If you become wise in 40 years, what do you become in 900 years? How advanced is your mind? Like, that's crazy. The people, the descendants of Shem were united, and then God is like, I may confuse them. Tower of Babel. The Lord came down to look at the city of the tower the people were building. Look, he said. And who did he say it to? He's always talking to somebody. The people are united, and they all speak the same language. After this, nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them. Good. Come, let's go down and confuse the people with different languages. Then they won't be able to understand each other. I thought God wanted us to unite. So that's definitely that throws yeah, I don't understand that. Literally God saying, let's go down and confuse them. And we could assume he's talking to angels. But I don't know. Then Abraham is born, and the call to Abraham, and Abraham starts with building altars. Then Abraham seems a bit of a coward, where as he's traveling and he goes to Egypt, and he's like, tells his wife, hey, listen, you're a beautiful woman, and they're gonna kill me if they know that I'm your husband. So let's say that you're my sister. That way you can, be with them, and I won't get killed. And it kind of worked. Pharaoh took his wife, and he gave him, sheeps and goats and cattle and female donkeys and whatnot, because he wanted his wife, and he thought that was her brother. So trying to hook him up, and then Pharaoh, you know, Abraham basically sold his wife. The father of all nations, selling his wife and being a coward. Didn't see that coming. But then Pharaoh finds out, Pharaoh's the king, right, over there, finds out and like, what have you done? Why did you tell me she was your wife? Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she's my sister and allow me to take her as my wife? Just weird. Author number 3 gets Bill, Abraham, there was already wars, like massive wars, 4 or 5 kings, wars happening already. And then from one area, seeing Abraham as a coward, to another area where, it shows Abraham, that this before his name was changed to Abraham. It was Abram at this time. Abraham, they had captured his nephew and he went, immobilized 318 men, trained men who have been born in his household. So he had his own army, and he goes to be ready to battle. That's a brave leader. So very different, 2 sides of the token. I see, some talk about giving the 10th to this person, as honor. I feel like that's where the tithing starts taking place, where, God and him makes that well-known covenant of every male must be circumcised on the 8th day of his birth. And I just find that really weird because I could just imagine them with some dull rock, cutting the baby's thing. But so be it. Don't judge what you can't understand. The Lord appears a lot to people in the Bible. One recurring theme is, one, God has a bunch of names, and at first I was like, why is he having to say, hey, I'm the God of your father, I'm the God of your grandfather, I'm the God of this, the God of that. But then after a while, you realize it's because, oh, you're God? I thought you was Lord. Oh, you're Lord, or you're God, or you're Jah, or you're El Shaddai. I mean, there's a lot of names as you go through the Bible, and they all have meaning. But if you already have to introduce yourself every time, and people don't realize you're God, I mean, you've gone to people's houses and they didn't know that you was God. Angels are walking around and people don't recognize them as angels. Why? How? I don't know. But in this one, 3 men standing nearby, and it was God and 2 angels. And in Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Like people are trying to have sex with them. So you can't tell. There's times where, burning bush, Moses doesn't even want to look at God because apparently he obviously knows he's God. He's revered. And then in other places like this, people don't even recognize that they're God and 2 angels. And, coming from a Jewish family, milk and meat is not allowed. And over here, God is having yogurt and milk and the roasted meats served. And as they ate it, Abraham waited on the shade of the tree. As they is the 2 angels and God eating. Because God gets hungry. And he's not a vegetarian. That kind of hurts my soul. But there's a lot of other things that God does that hurts my soul in the Old Testament. Um, you know, 19:1, who is with God? Let's see, 19:1. Oh, if I find a different one, the 3, including God, ate meat, yogurt. Lots of little notes around here. I'm just doing a recap of Genesis. Righteous people in Sodom, I will spare the entire city for the sake. I found that, they made a point that if there was 40 people, he would not strike down the whole town. If there was 30, if there was 20, if there was 10, he would not. But apparently, that's when, yeah. But before they retired for the night, all the men of Sodom, young and old, came over the cities around the house so they can have sex with them. I'll bring them out. Yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah got destroyed right then and there. The 2 angels went there and made it happen because of a culture of lust and violence. The whole thing got destroyed. Lot and his daughters, his daughters are sick. They got this man drunk, their father, the audacity of making their father drunk and having sex with them because they live in the wilderness and there's not men out there in the mountains. So they got pregnant by the father. Ironically, the older daughter gave birth to a son and he named him Moab. Guess what Moab stands for? The audacity. That's the meaning. The audacity. Yeah, there was a lot of incest back then, and it was okay. It was like how they kept their bloodline. Sisters, and it was just crazy. Angel of the Lord, Abraham. This one, another question. Abraham, at this time it's Abraham, tested, God tested Abraham and says, hey, take your only son. Take your only son, take him to that mountain and sacrifice him. Yeah. Took you a long time, he was already an old man, and but go and sacrifice him. So he's like, okay, God. Didn't look like he put up a struggle. Through the Old Testament, you hear people like Moses arguing, straight arguing. I think Jacob wrestled with God. I think Jacob was the one that was bow-legged after with a limp. Abraham doesn't put up a fight. He's like, take your son, your only son, yes, Isaac, whom you love so much, go to the land of Moriah, go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I will show you. The next morning, Abraham got up early. He saddled his donkey and took his 2 servants with him and Isaac. And God didn't even come when he was about to do it. He tied him up. He tied him up there. Can you imagine Isaac's, what he was going through? He tied him up, about to kill him. And God doesn't come and it's like, hey, man, good job. No, he sent his angel. And his angel is, Abraham. Like it was that close. He called him 2 times. Yes, Abraham replied. Here I am. Don't lay a hand on the boy. The angel said, do not hurt him in any way, for now I know that you truly fear God. You have not withheld from me, even your son, your only son, from me, from God. But that's the angel saying it. So there's a lot of playing words. a lot. Um, I find this. I've gotten a lot of explanations on this, but it's just odd that several times through the Old Testament so far, when there's an oath taken, they put their hand under the thigh of their master. Like, it's where the seed is. It's, let me put my hands on your scrotum, and I promise I will do what you ask. Just a very odd oath. Adonai, there's another name. Washing of feet is customary, not only to God, but that's where I first start seeing that. Before I finished praying in my heart, I saw Rebecca coming out with a water jug. She went down to the spring, drew water, said quickly, "Give me dry water." Ring on her nose. Oh, this is when Abraham sent his servant to find a wife for his son, for Isaac. Because this is where you can't really tell if Isaac was a child or he was an adult, because right after the whole sacrifice thing, Abraham sent his servant to his father's land, and they find a wife for him and he gets married and all that. And you may become the mother of many millions. Like, they were optimistic from the get-go. The whole promise that your seed is your family name, your ancestors, your nation, the whole Israel, hasn't become Israel yet. I believe that was Jacob. His name got changed to Israel, and that's where the nation came from. Mother Sarah's 10, and she became his wife, which I was wondering if there was a wedding ceremony in there or just sexual marriage ceremony. A concubine gave sons. Yeah. The price for man's hunger. Lived on hostility towards other relatives. God just making, condemning people. The two children struggled with each other in the womb. This is when, the twins, Jacob and Esau, from the get-go, they're twins, and they're fighting in the mother's womb. The sons in your womb will become two nations, God says. They'll be rivals. Your older son will serve the younger son. And the rights of a firstborn and the blessings, from a father are really, really, they mean a lot here. Argument, Ezek, which means argument. So now hostility, open space. Jacob from the dude. This is where the blessings come from on Isaac, which is the father of Jacob and Esau. Give different blessings, and Esau is the older brother, but he was going blind. Jacob snuck in there, took his father So he kind of made it easy for Jacob in a weird way, like kind of the whole give a man a fish, you know, he gave Jacob the fish. Esau, he taught him how to fish. He made Esau's life a lot harder. Um, the first, you know, talk about Stairway to Heaven, I saw in a dream, Jacob's dream in Bethel in Genesis 28. Here's where, Jacob says that he's going to give 10% of everything to God. Rachel was a shepherd. I thought that that was really cool. I didn't know that there was female shepherds. And, Jacob wants to marry this Rachel girl that's a shepherd. And he has to work 7 years for her father with no sex as payment for Rachel. And he does it gladly. And on the wedding day, his father is like, it's not a good custom to marry your younger daughter before your oldest daughter. It's almost like bad luck. So I'm going to trick him. And I'm going to sneak my oldest daughter in there and they're going to have sex. So that happens. Now, not only is Jacob married to sisters, he's got to work an additional 7 years to pay for the second one. Leah, I believe it was her name. Leah. Yeah, anyways. So he has to, Laban was his name. Rachel servant. Yeah, Leah. Yeah. Then he ends up having babies with the servants, with Leah's servants and Rachel's servant, and they all have kids. Like he ended up with a bunch of kids. Jacob, I think he had 10 kids or something like that, maybe more. This is where, after the 14 years of working for this man, Jacob is like, man, I did my time. Could I just get the spotted goat, the ones with stripes, and you can keep all the nice ones, and I'll take that as payment, and I could be on my way, and Laban, is tricky and tries to do all this thing, and God just is on Jacob's favor. Kale was apparently really good. At one place, Rachel said, I will let Jacob sleep with you tonight if you get me some of the mandrakes. Mandrakes is like kale. And she was talking about Leah. I guess they took turns on who slept with him. And yeah, Laban, such a wealthy man and so unfair, and they just backed up on him. Jacob lying to his wives, and smart but spooky. God has taken your father's animals and given them to me. That was the whole job. Jacob flees. The angel said, look up and you will see only streaked, speckled, and spotted males. That's when God is like, oh, he's trying to trick you. Let me take all his. Why have you stolen my God? That's when Laban chased after Jacob and his wives, and It's like, why have you left me without letting me say bye to my daughters and my grandkids? Well, man, you trying to ruin my life, dude. And his daughter Rachel stole one of his idols, his father's idols, and just a lot of drama back then. Um, the first time I see broken bread, breaking bread, when there's a pact. We met your brother Esau, and he is already on his way to meet you with an army of 400. That's when, Esau and Jacob had issues. Jacob had fled because Esau was going to try to kill him, and that's how he ended up marrying Rachel and Leah and everything. And then he was coming back home, and, he feels that Esau is coming to kill him, and, you know, forgiveness is a beautiful thing because Esau is actually, when he meets him, he's there with his men to protect his brother. And he embraces him and kisses him and loves him. And it's just real beautiful. Here's where, you know, Jacob wrestles with God. You know, he doesn't know that he's God. A man came and wrestled with him. Man saw that he could not win. God could not win. So he touched Jacob's hip and wrenched it out of socket. Then the man said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." It's like a vampire. Like, I gotta go, dude. I broke your hip because I can't win this. The man saw that he could not win. It's God. What do you mean you can't win? You made me out of your breath. Blow me away. A lot of little things I can't understand. Please tell me your name. Jacob said to him, "Why do you need to know my name? I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been spared." When Esau comes with his army of 400 and Joseph has all his kids and everything, my heart goes to him because he puts his baby, which was with a slave woman, and puts him at the back of the pack. So if they're going to kill people, he gets to get saved. And that's when, the brother's forgiveness, embraced him, threw his arms around his neck, kissed him. They both wept. Sukkot, here's where he built his shelter, and that's where the word Sukkot comes. Pretty ruthless. Jacob's sons deceiving the towns. Oh yeah, they convinced the whole townsmen of Shechem because Shechem raped Dinah, his sister. I think it was Dinah. It was his sister and this guy, yeah. And Shechem was the prince of this place called Shechem. And Jacob's sons decide to, say, "Yeah, we'll forgive you if you guys, go and get circumcised." The whole all men in this town, and they go to the town's hall. They talk about it. They do it, or they decide to do it, and they just kill every man there, and they take their wives and kids as slaves. Like, not the most godliest man, I think. Plundered the town because the sister had been denied. Plundered, like stole, took over everything. God said, "Get ready and move to Bethel, settle there, build an altar," another altar, who appeared to them in the fear and brother. So, to the God you saw in your journey to meet Saul, God of your father Abraham, Here I put, why isn't God easily recognized? Just constantly. I don't understand the offerings either. He doesn't need them. Why does he need to have multiple names, and why does he need to have all these offerings? You made these animals, and like later on in Exodus, it talks about the Passover, and you gotta kill. All the families have to kill a young goat, a perfect young goat, can't be a sick. 1 years old, every single household. So you figured 10 people in each household, and there was 600,000 of them. It's a lot of goats to kill. Benjamin, beautiful robe. This is one of my favorite stories, when Joseph, Jacob gives Joseph the beautiful robe. Burlap. When people mourn people, they rip their clothes and they put burlap, like, to be more comfortable. Brothers never communicated very well. Judah and his brother, all the brothers were, not all the brothers, some of them were good. Judah was, he came back to try to save Joseph after Joseph got sold to the Egyptians, and, to Potiphar, the officer, and the Pharaoh's the captain, and he worked for him, and then captain's wife got mad because he wouldn't have sex with him, and blamed him, accused him. He went to prison. Drama of rejection. Perez, the first Perez is in Genesis 38:29, meaning breaking out, because the kid was breaking out the womb. Look, my husband brought me his Hebrew slave here to make fools of us and rape me. That's a conniving woman. But it was all meant to be, because Joseph went to prison, and there he was made into a leader, and he would, predict dreams, even though he claimed that only God predicted dreams. But right after, he would predict them. And he ended up predicting the Pharaoh, and he became a governor, and, 7 cows, created progress. I mean, I really enjoyed, always have enjoyed Joseph's story. 38 minutes. Your God's father must have put his treasure in your sacks. They tore their clothing in despair. I am God of your father. How do these people don't know God's voice after they have talked to him so many times? Here's another under my thigh pack. Jacob becomes a prophet in his last days. Like, he's like in his deathbed, and he tells all his sons what they're gonna be and what they're gonna have and what's happening. I don't understand a lot, but in one over here in 49:11, 49:10, he's talking to Judah, my son, and until the one coming whom it belongs, the one whom all nations will honor. I'm assuming he's talking about the Messiah, but it doesn't say it in those words. And he puts the one who he washes his clothes in wine, his robes in blood of grapes. Don't understand that at all. 12 tribes of Israel. um, which it made sense. I highlighted it because I'm sure that I'm going to read about it as the family grows. I mean, from just Abraham, in Exodus, in the beginning of Exodus, he already has 600,000 people. And I believe that was just the men, because they only count men, they don't count the women and children. Jacob dies, and he gets embalmed, which was weird because I thought that Jewish people don't get embalmed, and by this time Jacob is been named Israel. So I may be wrong, but I believe that's the beginning of Judaism. It's when the nation is created. But I'm pretty sure that I'll read more about it in Exodus. So 41 minutes to go through Genesis. Very lightly, very questionable. Lots of questions. Not leaning towards believing, not believing, right, wrong, just, some notes on the whole book of Genesis. Interesting points.